Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer for a special Wednesday night show. We appreciate you joining us. We've got a great guest tonight, Ron Messer. He did 20 years in the Florida National Guard, deployed numerous times, and he's with us tonight. A big part of our force anymore is the National Guard and the reserves, and they relied upon a whole lot more than they were in the past, and they may not realize how much the Guard does. Units, and in some cases, individuals have been repeatedly deployed to the extent that for some, it probably didn't feel like a part time job. Gone are the days of one weekend drill a month and a 2 week training event in the summer. Guard units are constantly deployed now. So it's a different deal than it used to be. And they have the same experiences when they're deployed as regular Army units. As I said, he did 20 years in the Florida National Guard and numerous combat deployments. Like many others, he didn't come back exactly as he left. He's had some challenges and still has some. And to top it all off, while working in the VA, he claims he's to have been targeted for being a white Christian male during the Biden administration, which is very believable. And his case is still pending. He's not just focused on his own problems, though, but has started a ministry to help other veterans dealing with trauma from their wartime experiences and continues to fight against DEI. That's the diversity, equity, and inclusion garbage. That even though that's no longer the official sanctioned policy by the Trump administration, it hasn't disappeared yet. And once again, he's retired Sergeant First Class Ron Messer, and his organization or his site is his ministry is called GrizzlyArmy.com, and he's here to tell us about his story and tell us about his organization, gives a little update on his case, and we may hit a couple of other areas as well. Well, hey, Ron, we appreciate you being with us tonight. How are you?
Thanks a lot, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to have you. Like to support veterans. We've had several veterans on the show. We try to do that every now and then. Usually it's on a Sunday afternoon, but we thought we'd give a Wednesday a shot. So
Yeah, appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So tell us a little more about yourself and your time in the military.
Well, again, I was a Florida Army National Guardsman. I joined back in 1999 when it wasn't really cool to be a guardsman. We were called the weekend warriors or the nasty girls. And I guess to an extent we were, but when 9/11 happened, that changed everything for a lot of us. I was going to do 6 years and get out, and I took full advantage of the Florida down here in the state of Florida. They give you educational dollars for duty, so you can basically go to college for free. The state picks it up. I think all the states do it now, but back in the late 90s, it was very rare. So not only did my parents do the Florida prepay for me, I had a whole, the National Guard paid for it. But then when 9/11 happened, that really affected me and a lot of other soldiers. And we felt a very, it was kind of like our Pearl Harbor, so to speak, right or wrong. We don't need to get into all the details tonight, but it felt like an honorable thing to go to these wars. So I did 20 years. I re-enlisted. I got promoted to E5, and then I was off to the races in Afghanistan with the 53rd Infantry Brigade. That led to the second tour in 2010 with the brigade, and then I went back as the PGK instructor for the 13 Fox instructor for the PGK fuse, which is a precision guided fuse that they're using in Ukraine right now. My final deployment was in Germany, where I worked with a Special Operations Command, and I did retire as a Sergeant First Class and went off to the VA. But it was a great career. I don't regret anything. It taught me a lot, and it gave me a lot of leadership, things that maybe I had lacked prior to becoming a non-commissioned officer.
You still keep in touch with any of the people you served with there in Florida?
Oh yeah. So down here, so the guards, it is a lot different than active duty, but we're planning a reunion with the Wild Boys. That was the name of the squad. The way the guard worked, they weren't. They put all the heavy weapons soldiers in one squad. So we literally had 240 Bravos, two Sauls within 7 soldiers, and we'd go out on patrols. They should have divided it up with the infantry, but they didn't really do things the right way. But we're going to be doing a reunion here pretty soon, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then, of course, Facebook is real nice to keep in touch with all the other admin folks and the AGR that we still stay in contact with. So, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, I remember my deployments that we didn't use artillery a whole lot after the initial phase of OIF. I'm not
Yeah,
saying we didn't use it at all, but we didn't use it a whole lot. But we had all those artillery units that were part of our brigade and part of our division. So
sure.
they started calling themselves art infantry because
Yeah,
it's not like, okay, yeah, you guys are going to sit here for a year and just wait to go. No, so they they put them out there. They did
Oh
parole
yeah.
patrols. They, I'm sure they did checkpoints and other things like that. So they were out there too, and they're not normally trained for that kind of stuff, but they had to suck it up and do it, and so that they
Sure.
got a lot of experience in things that they otherwise wouldn't have had.
We became the security force, the Sec 4 over on that first tour. So we did the tower duties, real boring, we did the patrols, and then we kind of made the command a little upset. So they sent us down to Kandahar where we beefed up an infantry platoon that had taken some casualties. They had some guys get injured. So we went down there, and that's really where a lot of the action happened for us down in the Kandahar, because we were down there for the spring offensive in 2006. So we got to see almost everything over there: IEDs, infantry, and we did a lot of the training like you had talked about. So we weren't just sitting on the base with nothing to do. I mean, we were in sync with the active duty components down there. We worked a lot with the 10th Mountain down there
Oh,
at
okay.
Kalat District. Yeah,
Yeah, good unit, good unit. Hey,
yeah.
so when you came back, what were some of the problems that you ran into?
Well, of course, the first thing a good combat soldier when they return is we beg for the first hangover that we can get, because we've been sober for a year. Because as you know, General Order Number One's real. There's no booze over in any of these deployments, which is a good thing. It ain't like Vietnam where the movies they got Tom Hanks out there with all the beer, with Bubba Gump. But it one of the main challenges was, well, back then, everybody loved soldiers. I mean, Dave, you know that everybody 20 years ago couldn't get enough of us. They would, shake our hands and buy a drink at the bar, thank us for our service. And I didn't really care. I didn't really care for none of that. But the challenge was after some time, that all wore away. And then people got back to their lives and, forgot about us and the care that we need and some of the other things that we need as a combat soldier. Not that we're needy, but, just the understanding, some of the family members have had some problems with that. And we're still working through those things. But going from a high tempo environment to where you're basically a nobody again, you're just another number. That was one of the main things that affected me. And like any soldier, I had turned to the alcohol. That was one of my crutches. And then I joined motorcycle clubs, believe it or not, because you got to keep that adrenaline going. And like I tell people, if you hadn't been in the turret of an up armor Humvee screaming down a highway with a 50 cal in front of you, with all your battle buddies in the truck, I mean, I can't explain these things to you. That's why a lot of us are drawn to the motorcycle, the MC communities, So, but I had always joined the veteran law enforcement clubs. I stared away from the one percenters, but that was kind of how I dealt with my problems, just hanging around the bars for a long time, which was not very productive at all for anybody, including me.
So what got you turned around, and it led you to setting up a ministry to help other people that were dealing with that kind of stuff?
It's like anything, it kind of builds and builds and builds. And, my first marriage fell apart. She wasn't a bad lady, but just not the lady that I needed. And, she left me on that second tour. She just deployments weren't for her. So I got home and I just tried to move on with my life, and I hit the bars, and I just, you can keep doing these things over and over again, and they never satisfy you. You'll never have your cravings completely satisfied. You'll wake up empty and alone and wanting more, but it just never gets satisfied. And then that kind of led to when I had my career at the VA. I wanted to be a supervisor because I was a leader in the military. But the way the VA is designed, people like me are not supposed to have those type of jobs. But it just so happened that God allowed that to happen. And I kind of hit a rock bottom, so to speak. And I had got on my hands and knees and I begged Jesus. It was literally like 2 nights before New Year's Eve of the year 2022, right before my lawsuit kicked off, by the way. I was working at Bay Pines, but I had got on my hands and knees and I just begged Jesus to just take it away. I'll do whatever your bidding is, Lord. I can't, I want this feeling gone. I want this emptiness. I want all this despair out of me because I know that I'm a good leader and I know that I can provide so much more if I could get the alcohol and the shackles of that addiction out of me. Dave, I've been a Christian my whole life. I was immersed in the Holy Spirit, my family, my mother, granny, papa, everybody. But believe it or not, I love telling the story, but Jesus told me to go to bed that night, and I did. And I woke up in the morning and not like any good drunk, I try to have one sip of my beer. I got nice water now from the grocery store. But the second I touched my lips, something supernatural happened. And basically I spit it out. It tasted like piss. And it frightened me so much that, it was a modern day miracle is the only way I can explain it. I had been dead sober 3 years and 3 months now. I don't crave it. I don't want it. But that was so powerful that Jesus would do that for me that was just beginning of my lawsuit, Dave, and we'll get into that in a minute. But it was a turning point for me. It's when we repent, we do the 180, and then we start going right back to Jesus. And then I started reading the Bible, and Believe it or not, that's when the devil really, really turned up the heat with me in the workplace. It all makes sense now, or as much as it can, but it was literally right before it was the during the holidays of 2022. That was a turning point for me.
Now, what hospital did you say you worked at in Florida? In the
It,
which VA?
it was called the Bay Pines Veterans Hospital, and just a little bit about that place. It's the oldest hospital in Florida. It's 94 years old. Congressman C.W. Bill Young is the man that got it on the map. It had been there for a long time, and I'm going to tell you something very interesting about it. It was built over Indian burial grounds. So I don't know if that has something to do with the demonic entities and a lot of the evil that's around that place. I was told that people do seances there. I had employees pull up next to me with pentagrams on their car. I mean, the stuff's real, and I felt it. I didn't quite understand it back then, but it is a beautiful campus, a lot of history there. And Congressman C.W. Bill Young loved soldiers. Him and his wife Beverly actually adopted a Marine that was injured over in Kuwait in a training accident sometime in like 2013, and adopted the guy because he didn't have any family. And Congressman C.W. Bill Young passed away, I think 2013, but the place is named after him. It's the C.W. Bill Young Bay Pines Veterans Hospital. It's the largest facility in Florida. They got all three branches. You got your healthcare, you got your cemetery, and you got the benefits there. So it's just a shame that what happened to me, it still goes on there. They still got a lot of problems.
So what job were you doing at the VA?
Well, prior to the job with my problems, I was a peer support specialist. A peer support specialist is basically a counselor without the degree. You're somebody like us that has been there and done that. We have a little bit of training, and then we mentor soldiers into wellness. Mine was post traumatic stress. I did suffer from PTSD tremendously when I first got back, and had overcome those demons, so to speak. So it was my job to help train and coach other veterans, help them with plans and things like that. But then when I had the hostilities in the workplace, I took the job, which was, in my opinion, one of the best jobs. It was the assistant chief of voluntary service. So I'm basically like a first sergeant. I got 600 volunteers that drive you've seen them. They drive the shuttles around, the people that give you the coffee.
Yeah.
I was one of their bosses. I was the assistant chief. So it was a phenomenal job. I loved it. It was literally, what I'm doing now is definitely my best job. But prior to this was the best job I had in my life because I really thought the people loved working there. The volunteers were, for the most part, all good. And, I'd come in early and I'd stay late. It was just part of the job.
What was the conflict?
Well, the conflict was during the Joe Biden administration or whoever, the Otto Penn, the Obamas, whoever was running the government. I mean,
Right.
we can have a whole debate on that one.
Right.
They had done, in my opinion, and it's coming out in the lawsuit, a lot of illegal memorandums. A lot of orders came down from the secretary of the VA, and one of them should make all your audience members upset. They lifted the moratorium on registered sex offenders getting care at the VA and working at the VA.
Good Lord.
So if we're on a sex registry list, if we've harmed a child, then we can't be a soldier. You can't join the military if you've done that. And if you
Right.
do that while you're in service, you get what's called a dishonorable. I mean, these are very simple things. I got an email on my laptop over there. I still have it from work where they lifted the moratorium. It was November of 2022, and I couldn't believe that they were going to allow people that had done that type of stuff back in the VA, and people work there.
Right.
And so the union, the American Federation of Government Employees, have you ever heard of them?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Well, in my opinion, they are an extension of the Democrat Party, and they
Oh
they
yeah, they
hated
are.
Trump
They
and
are.
all the emails, everything that came out. Because even though I wasn't a union employee, I was in the executive career field as the supervisor.
Right.
I still saw a lot of the emails, and it was all anti-Trump, anti-this. They pushed all the diversity, and Takesha Thomas was the president over there at Bay Pines, and she wrote on Facebook, "Effing white privilege" in 2018 while she was on the clock, and nothing happened to the lady. There was a big uproar in the news, and the news came out there, but she had to do some corrective training, and then it just went under the rug. But I had to deal with this lady almost every week because I had an employee who was dysfunctional. The lady didn't work. She was a older light-skinned black lady, and she was in there to cause problems because they wanted to get rid of me so they could install who they wound up installing was an older black lady, Democrat. So the conflict was I was the guy that asked the questions. Why does this lady not have to come to work? Why does she get to come in when she wants? So how come she don't have to do her job? So that created unwanted attention on me. I didn't do the COVID shots. I didn't partake in the perverted pronouns in my email. So I was already automatically on some list. And then when I demanded to do some corrective action on the lady, you do your 3 verbals and then you go to paper. Well, that's when I got in a lot of hot water. The union were involved, and everything that I sent up was rescinded back down to me. And then they put me through an illegal investigation called an administrative investigation board. And I agreed to it. I had no idea who these people were. I said, well, clearly this investigation will be fair. They will find out that my employee is the problem. The union is the problem because they're influencing everything. And the director and everybody else is just going along with it. What they
But
did,
what
Dave,
exactly did they accuse you of? I mean, did they say that you
oh yeah,
didn't follow procedure or
oh
what?
yeah. They basically said that I went out of my way to target this lady, unfairly went out of my way to single her out and violate her rights. They had already written the conclusion of the investigation before the investigation was done, and that's what my lawsuit determined. They were in my medical records. They asked me about a 10-year alcohol addiction in an investigation into my work, and I said, "Well, hold on now. Why?" I was under oath. And I said, "Why are we talking about my medical? That's off limits." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Next question." So the interview, they did it because they just went through the motions, and my lawsuit proves that the VISN, we're talking the VISN level, that's above the hospitals, kind of like your brigade. They had went ahead and written the investigation to get rid of me. They were going to use it to fire me, and they wound up in the conclusion saying that I violated the code of conduct, that I violated this lady's rights, and that I had done X, Y, and Z. And they were going to use that to terminate me because I was never, a white Christian guy. I was never supposed to have the job. So this was almost a year of this constant back and forth, back and forth. And I think their goal was to discourage me enough that I would just walk away from the job. And that usually works 99% of the time. But I'm the man that's like, wait, I got convictions and I can't, this is wrong what's going on here.
Did they ever say anything specifically about you being a Christian or being a white or being a man?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The first charge from this lady. Yeah, I told you, Dave, these people, I got the lawsuit in the closet over there. It's literally 10,000 pages. That's why it's taken a long time. The first charge. Now, this is interesting because it ties into Jesus removing the alcohol out of me. If I had been drinking during this time, I would have quit. I would have walked away. There was no way I would have put up with this. But Jesus told me I had to go through this. The first charge, this was 5 days after I was made sober by the Holy Spirit. I'm calling the lady. She's the employee relations, labor relations. She's the lady that we have to go through as a supervisor when we have a problem with a union employee. She's the buffer, and she's supposed to be on our side for the most part to help the
Or,
hospital.
or at least neutral?
Neutral, absolutely neutral.
Yeah.
But we're having a meeting and we're like, look, this employee don't want to work. She backtalks. She's nasty to the veterans. She's this, she's that, and everything I had documented. I'm an E7. I don't mess around with the paperwork. So this lady starts laughing at my boss and I, Frank Jones. And I'm like, why is this lady laughing? And then she goes, well, y'all got her, didn't you? You finally got her. And I'm like, well, I think we did. She told me she wasn't going to do what I asked her to do, which was clearly in her job description. And then she leaned in and she goes, y'all are just two white men and you can't handle this little old black lady. I couldn't believe it. And I'm looking
If
at my
that was
boss.
if that was reversed, if something like that was said in reverse, I mean that there would have been a huge blow up, and the person would have been gone, and just like that.
Well, my boss called her out on it, and she's like, "Oh, I got to end the call," and then the lady disappeared. But I got all the emails, so she's charge number one. I got 9 charges on these folks. I got 2 directors removed because of this, but she was charge number one because she's the one that got it all kicked off.
And
Horrible.
what's the exact charge, or was she? Was she a specific charge, or she was just an example?
She brought up the fact that I was, my sex, she didn't say Christian, but she brought up the fact that I was white and I was a male. That's like the two. No, you're not supposed to bring those things up when you're supposed to get to the bottom of what's going on. You don't say, well, this black employee, this black female. I just said my employee. It's all about your words in the federal government. And if you're an enemy of them, they're gonna go out of the way to do this. But Dave, they get away with it. The way they treat us, the incoming that we get, we just have to take it. But I only took it for so long, and then I said, okay, I'm gonna hire a lawyer, and that's exactly what I did.
And so you filed suit what year? 22 or 23?
Well, this went on for a while. My boss actually, he got so discouraged, he quit. My boss walked away from a almost $100,000 a year job, and I couldn't believe it. So I actually became the chief of the service, and I said, well, I'm going to interview for the job, and there's no way they're not going to select me because we were running the top voluntary service of all of Florida. We had the best, the most volunteers, the most participation with the veteran service organizations. We had the most donations, like $3 million were coming in. when we did the Veterans Day ceremony, the Memorial Day, I had 3,000 people there. I had the reenactors. HK would have been invited, you know. But what happened was they couldn't believe that every time they put a snarf for me, I just hopped on out of it. You know, they just couldn't get me. So what they did was I interviewed for the chief, and that was a GS-12, Dave. That was, well, today it would have been about 90,000. When I interviewed for it, my first round of interviews, I did really well with my peers, other people in other services. When I interviewed with the managing officials, they gave me zeros on my questions. The score is a 1 to 5. So if I did bad, I get a 1. But if I do really well and they like it, I get a 5. And that's how they rate it. I got 0.0 with an exclamation mark, basically saying, F this white guy. He ain't ever going to get the job. And these people failed to realize, or they didn't read my resume, but I worked for 2 congressional offices. That's all I did was FOIA requests. That's when I got those back. That's when I knew I had a lawsuit. But I had to walk away from the job, Dave. I had a mental health relapse in the workplace because these people were. They finally got to me, you know, and I had one of these individuals just staring at me in a meeting with Christina Brown, the previous director, one of the 2 that I got fired, just staring at me with her eyeballs about to pop out of her head with just hatred for me. And you know, I'm like, what's going on here? And she was a witness to try to get me and wrapped up as a witness to a charge they were trying to put on me. I didn't fall for it, but it was walking back to my. It was September the 8th of 2023 is when I had to walk away, Dave. And then the lawsuit didn't start for about 6 months after that. But it was back and forth with these people. They fired me, then they had to rehire me, then they turned off my access, and they had. I mean, every step I beat these people. It's a nightmare.
So are you You're not currently working with them then?
Well, they fired me illegally, Dave. I eventually, after a year and a half, I held on for a year and a half. I was on extended leave without pay. And Christina Brown, the previous director, she moved my time slot into her time slot. So nobody would know what she was doing. And she was putting me down on her time slot as on extended leave without pay. But she was reporting to everybody else that I was AWOL. That was another charge, that I was AWOL, that I had AWOL, walked off the job and said to hell with everybody. And then they started a rumor that I had ended my life. I can't make this stuff up, Dave. These people are not American, in my humble opinion. But I held on for a year and a half. And then the gay black lady that they replaced me with, the lady never interviewed for the job. They posted it. I, you know, and then within 12 hours, they took it down and they just gave her a direct hire. She eventually fired me. And one of my charges for termination, Dave, you're going to love this. It was disrespectful and demeaning behavior towards the pride flag.
What?
Because I got it over here somewhere because I mean I was out there doing Sergeant Major Grizzle Grits. I was protesting them, and I was going hot and heavy on that LGBT and the DEI. So that was one of the charges they terminated me with. So
But
it
you
was an
weren't
illegal
doing.
termination.
Wait a minute. Were you doing that during duty hours or at other times?
Sergeant Major Grizzle Grits never existed until about 6 months after I left the job, and that's what
Okay.
they tried to. They lied. They said that I was doing it while I was at work.
Okay.
Unbecoming of a chief. But I left in September of 2023. And the first Sergeant Major Grizzle Grits video was sometime in March. And then I was out
Hey,
there
we're going to have to
protesting.
explain Grizzle Grits here in a minute, but
That's the character, you know.
I
Everybody
got
needs
you.
a superhero.
Yeah, and we definitely want to talk about that. So, what's the current status of the lawsuit?
So the lawsuit, I mean, anytime you deal with the federal government, it's a nightmare. So it's been at the EEO judge, the equal employment opportunity judge. It's been at her desk since.
Hello? I think we lost you there. Okay, we lost him. Hopefully, we'll get him right back. Pretty sure that's on his end. Hopefully, he's coming back.
Yes, he has left. He has an connection issue.
Okay.
In the meantime, here's grizzlyarmy.com. Check it out.
Yep. Start Major Grizzle Grits. We definitely got to talk about that one.
And here is their mission.
Grizzle Grits Ministries will focus on guiding you to a meaningful life, one mentoring session at a time. We will use our training in mental health to fill your soul with the Holy Spirit. The Grizzly Army Ministries will be the umbrella organization with many side projects to include community work parties, homeless programs, community feeding, coffee socials, and community needs projects. So that's some of what they do there at the Grizzly Army Ministries. And of course, he does have a YouTube. And I'm not sure if there's I don't think there's currently a Facebook. Let me see if I can if we can pull him back up here.
He's not back yet. I'll let you know as soon as he does.
Well, I'll tell you what, while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and fill you guys in on some of the updates that I will hit later, or maybe sooner than later. Sooner rather than later. Anyway, you know, I've talked about our state Republican majority and how worthless they are. And I think they're actually getting worse somehow. You know, we had a
Ron
lot
is
of good.
back.
Say that again.
Ron is back.
Okay. All right. We're going to go back to Ron. Hello, Ron. Okay. I see you. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you're saying. Okay. Let's work on the volume there. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get his volume back here in a second. So there were several important bills in the legislature this year, like there always is. And, you know, session's not quite over. I'm not optimistic about getting anything good because so far the Republican supermajority has pretty much either killed or delayed until next year pretty much everything. As I understand it, the party registration bill, or at least one of them, failed today in committee. The nullification bill, which we talked about the other night. Now, get this. Briggs is the chairman. Senator Briggs is the chairman for the State and Local Government Committee in the Senate. Now, the last time this bill actually came before the State and Local Government Committee was in 2024, in the session during 2024, and then it was referred to summer study. And we finally had that summer study roughly in October. Well, there are like 3 new members now of that committee. And my understanding, I didn't get a chance to see it, but others that had the opportunity told me that when it started out, when it got to the bill. Now, keep in mind, Janice Bolin has worked on this bill in the Senate for several years now, just as Bud Halsey has worked on the House version for several years now. Bud did an excellent presentation the other day in the House committee on this. And if you go to tncs.weebly.com, sign up for the Substack, you can hear it, or you can dig through it on Tennessee.gov and go to that video, and you can pull it up and you can hear what he had to say. But it's easier to go to tncss.weebly.com and sign up for the Substack. Anyway, so Senator Briggs said, well, you know, I think everybody's pretty much familiar with this bill where we know about it. We had the summer study, blah, blah, blah. Now, he knows he's got 3 new members there who may not be. Matter of fact, one of them, you know, 2 of those people are, at least 2 of those people are new to the committee from other committees. I think Gardenhire was not on there in the past. He would have been a no anyway, but all the same. And then we had Hatcher. Well, Hatcher, I don't even think was in the Senate last time it was heard, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he was even up there yet. So there were 3 guys of that group that hadn't even heard, didn't know really anything about the bill, other than whatever they heard Janice say during the presentation. And you know, that's not a whole lot of information, because, you know, if you're not familiar with nullification, if you don't know anything about it, you need a little bit of time to hear it and understand it. Now, those of us who, you know, follow this kind of stuff, and the people that have followed this show, they should at least be somewhat familiar with nullification by now. Anyway, he said, we're not going to, you know, there's no reason to hear anything about this or debate this. We're just going to vote on it. And it lost. I mean, it was like 6-3. Now, it's the 6. Now, I do want to give credit to Senator Wally, because Senator Wally did agree that he would second the motion. He told Janice that 2 years ago, and he kept his word today. So I do appreciate that. He made the second, and he voted for it, as did Senator Roberts. And I'm trying to think. Oh, Senator Lowe. Senator Lowe's opposed it in the past, but he did vote for it this time. But the rest of them, of course, voted against it, and you know, it's dead for another year. All of the gun bills, and this was in the Judiciary Committee, which is
Dave, Ron is back if you want, when you're ready.
Okay, I'll finish this up and then we'll go back to Ron. All of the gun bills, are practically all of them, from what I understand, that we're going to go through because they go through the committee that Gardenhire chairs, Senator Gardenhire, who is one of our absolute worst senators. Never met a pro-illegal alien bill that he didn't like. This guy really needs to go. I really wish East Tennessee would get rid of that guy. I mean, we had a chance 2 years ago. Apparently didn't have a very good candidate to oppose him. We need to get rid of him. In 2 years, we need to find somebody to get rid of that guy. Anyway, he decided that all the gun bills, he was going to boot them to next year. We'll hear them next year. Well, that means all the bills that maybe are somewhere still in the process in the House, they're toast, because you have to have a House companion bill with any Senate bill and vice versa. Now, if other senators are really upset about this, they can make a case. There's things they can do. They could take it to the leadership and say, hey, we want to bring this to the floor, or we want you to step in and force him to at least hear these bills. So there's things they can do if they really want to. I wouldn't hold my breath. Anyway, we're going to go back to Ron now. Can you hear me, Ron? Hello, Ron.
You got audio. Hi, this is Dave.
Can you hear me now?
Well, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead. I hear you. I got you.
My goodness. Oh, wow.
Okay.
You start talking about this horrible, perverted federal government, and then these type of things happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of farted out on us. Look, my experience with the VA, I've had a lot of good time there. There was a lot of good work that we did, but the union was running that place, and I don't know where they were getting their orders from. The Democrats, I don't know, but it was a nightmare. The directors were not directing anything out there. They were just shaking hands and showing up at all the events and just doing what they were told. And Paul Russo resigned the first time I went out there to go do my peaceful protest. And the day that I went out there with my body armor, we'll get into that in a minute, he put in his retirement packet that day.
That was your boss?
It was one of them, yeah. I had the director, and the deputy director was my direct boss. And then she became the intern director, and she's in the lawsuit, and she took the fork in the road. So she got on out of there, before the fork led to either 9 months of pay that Mr. Trump was going to give her, or it led to me and Sergeant Major Grizzle Grits. So she took the other route for her own benefit, I would imagine.
So what's the status of your lawsuit?
The status is at the judge's desk, and it's been there since January of last year. So a year and 3 months it's been with the judge, and the judge told us, my lawyer, and we got the DeVato's law firm. So if any of your listeners has a problem kind of like mine, federal, you got to call DeVato's. My lawyer just chewed these people up. He uncovered things that I didn't even uncover. But it's at the judge's desk. It's been there for a year and 15 months now. And she told us she would have a decision by July of last year. Now, we remember what happened last year around July, right?
Yeah.
The government shut down, and then it didn't reopen for 4 months. And then we never heard from the lady. I don't know. She might be hanging out with Mr. Epstein somewhere on an island. I don't know. She just took off. We can't get any updates. But, God told me to just leave it in his hands. That's why I'm doing the ministry now.
So from what you understand, since you've left the VA, has it gotten any better? Have they cleaned up any of the DA? Because, the VA is a big organization, just like the Army is a big organization. And I understand that President Trump thinks that he just sends out something and boom, that weeds out all the bad apples all at once. But that's really not the way it works. You really have to stay on it and follow up. And especially in an institution the size of the VA or in the size of the Army, it takes time. And it's not necessarily just always the top line supervisors that are rotten. There's a lot of others who bought into that whole DEI garbage and have promoted it, and they're pushing it and will continue to push it. So in some cases, they'll just rename it unless you're really being held accountable. But from what has it gotten any better?
Well, my wife still works there, and I got to be careful because, people know that she works where she works, and they use that against her. When I was out there helping Mr. HK, they got to her, so to speak. It's kind of a personal matter, and we've worked through that. But I literally infiltrated the Tampa VA during that time. I had a wig on, and I was just going to go get my medical record, and I got a video. It's hilarious. But I had employees flipping me off when I'm walking in there. Employees. Because I'm just like, look, gentlemen, I know y'all got 30 minutes, but these people will go over to Walmart and do their grocery shopping, and they'll come back whenever they come back. It's all true, Dave. And when I was there,
Did they know it was you when you were dressed up, or you talking about in general?
Probably not. But what I uncovered, because you're not allowed to record when you go on the federal property. What I
Right.
observed was employees were not wearing their badges. I have my badge around here somewhere. I still have everything. You got to wear your badge above your waistband. It has to be where people that come
Right.
on there like me, I need to know if you're an employee or not. Nobody had their badges on. Nobody knew nothing. And I was doing on the spot corrections, and the VA police were following me around. I mean, it was like my little VIP personal tour. But then I got threatened to be put under arrest because they thought I was just being disruptive, but I wasn't, you know. The DEI is still there. And here's what I learned. These people are angry, they're bitter, and they let it out on the veterans because now they can't wear their gay lanyard. You've seen them, the gay lanyard, little, they got the rainbow thing where
Right.
they have their IDs on, and that was everywhere at Bay Pines. Well, they can't do that now because Mr. Trump signed the executive order.
Yeah.
They get in a lot of trouble. They can't have the pride flags. They can't have the safe spaces. But all those people have not gone anywhere. And what I've
Right.
learned is they let it out on the veterans now. So now your great granddaddy ain't getting the care that he should because now they're going to mistreat him because they're angry because they can't do what they want to do there. Dave, these people are the worst. I'm not saying all the all the VA employees, but there is a subgroup of them that they got no business ever being anywhere near a veteran, in my opinion. And just to expand on this, the director of the Tampa VA was just promoted to go over to Bay Pines VA. That happened this week. And that's the man that was, and I believe he was in my medical records. And under his facility, Mr. HK, I'm looking at his calendar, he went there to get his CPAP information and they refused to do that. So he was at the Mr. Dave Van Meter's his name. He was at the Veterans Day event when Mr. HK was kicked out, and he was on the stage. And there was no representation of Tampa VA. Suicide prevention team was not there. There was no outreach whatsoever. And I called and complained to his office, and then I got a disruptive behavioral committee call, and then the Hillsborough County Sheriff are trying to do a domestic terrorism charge on me. So no, it has not changed. All they do is they do the shuffleboard, shuffle here, shuffle there. And now he's the director at the Bay Pines VA.
So
Yeah, they don't. Yeah.
So are there anybody? Is there anybody between that local VA and Doug Collins, the head of the VA, that could help with this kind of stuff, or that you've had a chance to talk to?
Kind of given up on that route, honestly. I'm just kind of focusing on my ministry now. You know, I'll be honest with you, Dave. A lot of people just don't care anymore. It's kind of like what I said in the opening. 20 years ago, everybody loved us. They would have been out. I was certain I'd have 100 people out there protesting what happened to Mr. HK. But, I was happy with the 20 that I had. But it's like our society has shifted.
Right.
It's just not a priority for anybody. Okay, the veterans, what are you complaining about? You get your 100%. I know, but I don't ever go to the VA for my care because I don't trust that the doctor is a real doctor. They may have not really done good in their degree,
Yeah. So
I
let's
don't
talk about your. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't see any relief, unfortunately, and now we're involved in a whole nother conflict in the Middle East. So that's going to be a whole new generation of veterans that are going to be seeking care here in the next 10, 20 years. So it does need to be fixed. I just don't know if I'm the right guy for the job.
So talk about your ministry.
Well, my
Where did you-
ministry,
and I got to ask, where did you come up with the name Grizzly, and where did you come up with Sergeant Major Grizzle Grits?
well, like any good sergeant major, I had to get promoted, so it was kind of a joke, a spoof. I mean, I'm a gamer by trade. I like playing Call of Duty, but you can't really help salvation and help people seek the Lord when you're doing that type of stuff. It was my Call of Duty name for like 20 years, Sergeant Grizzle Grits. It was a funny name, and it just kind of stuck. And then when God compelled me to go out there and protest these people, that was of March of 2024. I literally, one of the guys on my fire team, one of the wild boys, Mr. Luke Ford, he came down here and stayed with me for a few days. And we had a lot of things that we had to answer for our time in the war. So we had a long, like hour-long prayer in the garage. And I said, look, let's create a YouTube channel. And I want you to do all the talent and I'll help run it. He says, oh, no, I wouldn't want to do that. And then literally God gave me the gift. So 2 days later, Sergeant Grizzle Grits happened on YouTube. And it just became part of the character, and believe it or not, Dave, I bought this for the riots. I bought my nice Kevlar here because in 2020 down here in Florida, they were having riots. So I figured, well, if I got to go get groceries for the kids, I'm going to suit it up. But it just so happened that God had all this for the character. And when I went out there to protest the Bay Pines VA, I went out there as a combat soldier because the whole point was you have kicked us out of the VA. A combat soldier, we can't even get care there anymore because all that care has been given to the transgender veterans and the LGBT veterans and all the registered sex offenders. So one thing I didn't tell you was I am master level trained in psychology. I got one more semester and I can have a master's. I just the COVID got in the way and I kind of lost my interest in it. But all the training's up here. So I started the website and I went hard and heavy after the LGBT. I don't care what people do in the bedroom, but it's obvious that it's about grooming the children. I mean, we got to be honest about these things. And so I did the protesting for a few weeks and I got a lot of support. And then my YouTube channel was mysteriously removed. I didn't get 1 or 2 strikes. It was just gone. And then I gave it up for a while and caused a little problem with the family. But God kept having me go back and go back. I've recreated that website about 4 times.
Oh, wow.
I've lost 5 YouTube channels. I was literally kind of like you. I was like just right around 500 subscribers, and then it was gone. So that's the devil trying to discourage me. So you just got to keep going, keep going. And every time I had to redo it, it just got better and better, in my opinion.
So do you have a lot of support from local veterans?
Not as much as you would think. I used to ride around in the motorcycle community, but having to go through this experience at work, a lot of people have kind of been hands off because they got jobs to lose. God designed this for me because I really got nothing to lose. They took my job, my reputation. I'm not of the earthly treasures any longer. So I'm just focusing on community events. We clean cemeteries, and we actually have a community work party coming up this weekend, which we're piggybacking off another organization called Brandon Roots. And they're from the Brandon area. We got a cemetery we're going to be cleaning up, but it's growing. Is what I'm saying. We're brand new. The 501c3 happened last year, and then HK happened, and then some family stuff. So I'm back in the saddle, and we're moving right along. We do have the 501c3.
What are you doing to survive, though?
Well, like I told you, my wife works, she's a nurse at the VA, so she has a very nice salary, and I'm 100%.
Okay.
And I was really good. We got a 2.24 interest rate on the home before the housing market crashed. The Lord's been very generous to me, Dave. So, I'm kind of like semi-retired. I make signs. All these signs behind me here, I made in my garage. I have a laser engraver.
Oh,
So
cool.
I've tried a lot of stuff. Some things work, some things don't, but we're just moving forward. And that's kind of the story here. You just can't ever give up.
So you said that, and maybe this is still the case, you seem to be catering more towards the DEI characters and the tranny. I mean, we're not supposed to be, as for what I understand, the VA is not supposed to be doing any more of that trans surgery garbage. Is that still going on? Hello? Hello? Okay. Well, lost him again. Hopefully we'll get him back here in just a second. We'll go back and talk about legislation a little bit. House Bill 1971 and Senate Bill 1958. House Bill by Farmer, Senate Bill by Stevens, who happens to be my state senator and among the worst in the state, by the way. Both of those bills made it through their respective committees. I have to look and see if they have another committee to go to other than calendar and rules. But we're at the point now on that. I mean, it looks like they may get it through. And those bills, what they do, if you weren't tracking, both of them, you have a House and Senate companion bill. The goal of this legislation is to remove your ability as a citizen to sue the state government when they pass an unconstitutional law. When they do something that is patently unconstitutional, they want to remove your ability to make a facial challenge on the constitutionality of the issue. Because the bottom line is they want to be able to pretty much do whatever they want and you not to be able to challenge it. Now, if you can show an injury, which to me, if you're abridging my rights, that's also an injury. They want to take that option away. They want to basically say, and some of them are on record as saying this, not so much in relation to this legislation, but they've been heard to say it by other people that I know. Well, we're the legislature. We can pass anything we want. We can do anything we want. And so if you remember and think about it, think about some of the groups that they have gone after in the last few years. They've gone after Tennessee Stands. They're very upset with the TFA right now over the Hughes versus Lee situation, even though It really wasn't TFA. It was GOA, Gun Owners of America. However, John Harris, who is the chairman and founder of the TFA, was the actual attorney that took the case, and they won 3-judge panel in Gibson County. Now, that 3-judge panel, remember, normally in Chancery Court, you have 1 judge, but if it's going to be on a constitutional issue, like this one was, and this is something the legislature set up in the last few years, then the Supreme Court appoints 2 additional judges because they don't want just 1 Chancery judge deciding a constitutional issue, which makes sense. Well, that 3-panel judge said, hey, State, Governor Lee, AG, Scarmetti, your law is unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional in accordance with our state constitution and prior Supreme Court opinion, such as Andrews v. State from way back in 1870, I believe it was, 70 or 71. And of course, now under current situation, it's unconstitutional in accordance with Bruin. So instead of the governor and the AG just saying, okay, yeah, we'll accept that, they appealed it. And so that drags it out. We were hoping this session that we would get rid of the intent to go armed clause through legislation, so it would all be a moot point. That hasn't happened yet. And if I understand it correctly, it's not going to happen unless they do something about this situation in the Senate committee that I mentioned earlier. Because you have to have the bills have to get both through the bills. A bill has to get through both the House committees, and the companion bill has to get through the Senate committees, and then they have to both be approved in the full House and full Senate. And then the governor signs it or not. Remember too, in the state of Tennessee, if the governor doesn't sign something, it's going to become law without his signature after 10 days. I mean, there are certain mitigating circumstances on that, but that's the deal. So unless something happens with what Gardenhire has done, looks like all of our gun bills are dead this year. So there's not much, and it seems like to me the only thing that the legislature really wanted to accomplish this year was increasing the amount of money spent on vouchers. And, last I heard, that bill was still moving through, but although there are some people who have concerns about it. So hopefully, maybe we can stop that. I'm hoping that we can, but I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Guys, we really need to look this year. At the end of this session, we need to look and see all of the common sense, constitutionally minded bills that our legislature failed to pass and or deliberately killed. Usually it's a case of deliberately killed. And because, like I said, we have a Republican, we cannot blame Democrats in the state of Tennessee for anything. Republicans have a super majority. Now, don't get me wrong. All the Democrats in the state of Tennessee are, in fact, communist, okay, and should not be trusted with any power whatsoever. But the GOP is not much better. They stab us in the back. I'm so sick of these guys. I am so sick and disgusted. We have a pathetic GOP majority. And I don't know. We've got to do something about it. If your rep or your senator has a challenger this year, because remember, between the 2 houses, we only have one. We may have a handful. We may have a handful between the 2 houses that are good. The rest are absolute crap with legs. They don't understand the Constitution, and parts of it they do understand, they don't care. They are essentially what I call chamber whores. They are there to do the bidding of the chamber, as in Chamber of Commerce. They are there to make sure the governor's happy. They are there to make sure, if they're in the Senate, that the lieutenant governor's happy, and if they're in the House, that the House speaker's happy. They don't give a damn about us. And the only time we can make them give a damn is during election season. So, unless you know for a fact that your guy is one of the few stellar ones, or the woman that's holding that position, unless you know that they're one of the stellar ones, you really need to be looking at whoever their challenger is, assuming they have a challenger. And hey, if they don't have a challenger, hey, maybe you need to be the challenger. I think maybe the time has passed on that, at least as far as the party goes. But in 2 years, 28, there'll be another election. But we got to get rid of some of these people. If you know of good people that are running in another district, even though you can't vote for them, do what you can to help them, because we need to get as many of these people out of office as we can. We're in a bad way. We're in a very bad way. And at the federal level, not confident that we're going to take back the House, or that we're going to keep the House, or that we're going to keep the Senate. I'm not confident. I think we'll probably lose it. And as bad as the Republicans are, if we lose one or both to the House, it's going to be ugly. We're going to need good people in our state, because really, guys, that's where it's at. I've talked about it before. The state should be the main focus, and the state is the only entity in the states that can push back on the federal government and keep it in its lane. If we don't do that, guys, we'll never fix the problem. If we keep focusing solely on DC, and if we stop expecting if we don't start expecting our state government to stand up to the federal government and keep them in their lane, DC's not going to fix itself. We're in a world of hurt. I heard the other day that there was something released, and we've known this for a long time, but we are what was the term used? Well, bottom line is we have more debt and deficit than we do GDP. As far as our total GDP, it exceeds it. You can't go on like that. At some point in time, you're going to crash. And I think in a lot of ways, we're done. The house just hasn't fallen down yet, but we're in a mess. And you're going to need a good state when that happens. You're going to need good leaders in your state when that happens. So, hey, we can either get back to the original intent of the Constitution, limited government, states run, your state government is the one you deal with the most, and the federal government only does those things delegated. If we don't get back to that, there's no hope. Absolutely no hope. A couple other announcements here, and I apologize. I don't have actually, I think I do. Let me pull up here. We've got a couple events for Monty Fritz. Ron, can you hear me yet?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties.
Okay. All right. All right. So we're going to finish up with you, and then I'm going to I'll go to the announcements. All right.
Perfect.
Sorry. All right. So
Grizzly Army Ministries. I think that's
Grizzly
where we
Army
got
Ministries, and what are some of the things your charity does?
Well, so right now we're doing community cleanups. We're cleaning up cemeteries, and what my goal is I want to get some veterans or even like-minded people, especially youth, in the summertime. We're going to be doing a summer youth program, kind of like what we did at the Department of Veteran Affairs. If we get out there in the sun and start doing some things in the community, it's going to help us with our sobriety. It's going to help us give us meaning and purpose. A lot of the soldiers that I know, they sit around the house and they're doing the medical marijuana and stuff. I mean, that's cool, but we need to get out in the community. It's going to give us a sense of purpose. We're going to be around like-minded individuals, get a little exercise, and we're helping the community. Because just like you were saying, Dave, I mean, we can worry about DC all we want, but if we don't start solving these problems at the local level, who cares about DC? It's a cesspool. And that's kind of why I was out there doing the protesting. And I learned so much about how horrible this county is. And I can't really worry about that because maybe someday I do run for a local office, but right now I'm focusing on getting the community cleaned up. And we're going to be doing some roadside cleaning. I want to do some more homeless feeding because we were kind of doing that right when HK kind of blew up on us. But it takes a little money to do that, little funds. And I can wait for the rest of my life for this lawsuit to be done. And it's the big one, Dave. We're looking at $300,000 in relief coming my way. If this ever gets done, that's the most you could ever get. And from the amount of trauma that they put me through with all the shenanigans that has happened, I think it needs to be closer to like $1 million. But whatever we do, we're going to put it in the ministry. One day I'd love to have a thrift store, kind of like how Goodwill used to be. Goodwill's like Walmart now. You go in there and a shirt's $10, but I want to do shirts for like a quarter. I want to help the lower income folks because as like you described, that gap's going to keep going, and people like us are going to get left behind. So a food pantry, clothing pantry, those are all things that we want to do down the road, and it's not that far off. We just got to get out in the community and start networking, and that's kind of what we're doing now. We've partnered up with Mission Barbecue, and I don't know, do they have Mission Barbecue up there
Yep,
in Tennessee?
yep, they have one here as well. Yes.
And we're going to start doing some things with them. So when we go out and do a community work party, they may come out and provide the lunch, and they love doing that stuff. So it's just finding the right people. And it's hard in Brandon down here where we live in Brandon. It seems like nobody wants to help you unless they can promote their business. That's what we're learning. And that's really challenging, because we're not doing this to promote anything other than, the ministry, spreading the word when we can. So like everything right now is out of our own pocket. When I mow the cemeteries, that comes out of our pocket. You got to spray the weed killer, but the families really appreciate it because it's all volunteers in some of these old cemeteries down here.
And if somebody's interested in joining, they just go to the website or
Yeah,
contact
go to the website, thegrizzlyarmy.com. That's kind of our website. I try to do a Facebook, but they won't let me. I told you, Dave, I get banned and blocked everywhere, but they ain't going to discourage me. You can't get a good soldier down. But I got a work number on there. Give me a holler if you're in the area. Let's partner up. If there's a cemetery or something that needs done, on call. If somebody needs a ramp built at their house, and the VA's dragging their feet, maybe we'll hire a contractor, or maybe they'll donate their time. I basically want to duplicate what we were doing at the voluntary service. I want to duplicate that in the community, just without all the perversions and all the LGBT and all the DEI. I think we can really get it done. But we're the grassroots right now. We're like in the infancy, the beginning stages of this. We're taking a tragedy and turning it into a nice success.
Okay. You mentioned HK a couple of times, and there might be some people that are not familiar with HK Egerton. I had him on my show once.
Yeah.
He's from North Carolina. He was from North Carolina. He died a little over a month, almost 2 months ago now, I think. And this guy was. You talk about having no quit in him. That was HK. And, he was out there to make sure people had the proper understanding of the South and the war for Southern independence. And talk about what you saw happen there in Hillsborough, Florida on Veterans Day. Keep in mind that HK is a U.S. Army veteran as well.
Yeah, he's Vietnam era. He was he did electronical training, I think in New Jersey. He was stateside, but he was still of the era. Just like HK, the flag behind me, my family's a Gold Star family. Uncle David, that's my brother-in-law, David Andrew Croft. He was killed in Baghdad in 2010. And that was the flag that the family was greeted with on his casket. So HK had his flag and I have mine. And when I was doing my protest, that flag was upside down out there. But we went to the Veterans Park that day, this past Veterans Day at Hillsborough County, because my brother-in-law David has a tiny, tiny little plaque out there with his name on it. My daughter wanted to go see him. So I figured it'd be a good opportunity for me to introduce my ministry to the Hillsborough County. Hey, look what I can do. They just kind of got the bad side of it, I guess. But we were there. I wasn't doing any protests, and I sit in the back naturally at these events. And then I saw HK. I never met the guy. I never knew who he was. I just thought, how interesting. There's a black guy with a Confederate flag. You don't see that every day. And not that I had a lot of arrogance towards that, but I kind of did. It was kind of like I just didn't have an opinion on it. But he changed all that for me. What I witnessed was 8 men with guns kind of coming up, and I thought like I told you, I thought they were coming after me because I've had run-ins with the local sheriff. I've been doing the protesting, and I'm like, oh my goodness, being a combat guy, I'm just kind of like, what is going on here? And he was standing 20 feet from me. And they were there for him. And they basically said, look, buddy, you're going to get on this golf cart and get out of here, or we're going to put you under arrest. And I observed the whole thing, Dave. I should have recorded it, but I didn't. It broke my heart as a veteran.
And for HK is I think he would have been 78 last month or 77 last month. Okay. Yeah. Not a big guy. Not a threatening guy by any means.
No. It's what he was wearing and what it represented threatened him. It's like, how dare you, a brother, dress up like that? And Dave, the whole event was a diversity, equity, inclusion event. And that director I told you, the guy that's the new director at the Tampa VA he was on the stage. All these people are on the stage. Jane Castor, that horrible Congress lady. I kidded around. I was going to run against her, but everybody was on that stage, and they were all guilty of this crime. And everybody lied. Frank Drum was the director. He came out with a memorandum saying, he was being disruptive. We had to kick him out. And none of that happened. And that's why I went out there and did the protesting there for 3 weeks. But when we were leaving, I was so angry because I had introduced myself to one of the staff members and I kind of explained my lawsuit, and it was a black lady, and she just turned away and walked away. Like she didn't want to hear a white guy complaining. And I got so angry. And I told my wife, we're out of here. We're going to Mission Barbecue. And as we're getting ready to leave, I could have taken the easy right to my free lunch, but I saw Mr. HK and Miss Linnell standing on the side of the road, and naturally I had to go introduce myself to them. And when I did, I have a video. Check it out on my YouTube. I told my wife, I said, I don't know why, but you have to record this. It was almost like God had passed off that gift that HK had with the flag and awareness, like over to me in a sense. Not the heritage thing, but kind of like standing up for what's right with a flag. And I went on the side of the road. I gave him a water bottle, introduced myself, and I was in tears out there. We prayed, and I said, "Sir, he's like, do you know who I am?" I said, "Sir, that's not important. I don't know who you are." And I said, "What they did to you was so wrong in there. How dare they do that in America?" And I cried with the man, and we prayed. And it broke his heart that they had treated him that way. That was all real. He suffered tremendously, and I believe it had a lot to do why he's not with us anymore, because it affected him and his health so severely. But I came
he was
back the
already
next.
having problems. He was already in a bad way when that happened.
He had taken
So
the
it certainly makes me
he had taken the COVID shot, and Miss Linnell told me that had hurt his heart. He had like 50%. But I went back the next day and I demanded some answers, and it just went downhill from there. Because then they basically ran me out of there and threatened to call the sheriff on me. And I said, "Well, you go ahead and call him. I'll be right out here." And then I came back, and then it was 3 weeks of protesting that, like I told you last time, it turned into the nice armed, peaceful protesting. Because down here in Florida, you can carry open carry.
Right.
That, I'm not trying to split hairs, but we were out there with our guns on us. And it wasn't to be threatening. It was just to let these people know that, look, you may have these jobs, but you work for us, and what you did was completely unacceptable. We demand some accountability, but there was no accountability. Nobody lost their job. Mr. Frank Strum, he went on another cruise for a couple of weeks, and, everybody's back to business, real sad.
Well, hey, thanks for coming
Yeah.
on, and thanks
Yeah, I
for what you
appreciate it,
do.
Dave.
Any closing thoughts?
Look, if you're a veteran and you're suffering, give me a call. I used to do the peer support. Dave, I did 2.5 years on the veterans crisis, not the crisis line, the suicide prevention team. Click the number, but if you just needed someone to talk to and I'm free, I'll be more than willing to talk to you. 99% of the time, we just need someone to hear us, and when we feel alienated, that's when bad things happen. That's when the devil will creep up in there and make us hopeless. And you got to get righteous with Jesus. If you're suffering right now, you got to start praying. You got to start opening the connection with the Holy Spirit, because God will not mess with you if you don't want to mess with him. And that's something I learned, Dave. And I'm plugged in, and I'm doing daily Bible studies now. And I'm going to try to start doing them more on the internet. So maybe more people can join, and we can actually grow the Grizzly Army and make it a real army, kind of like the sheriff thought that I had down here. But again, Dave, it's been phenomenal being on, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, but we'll keep supporting you, and we'll be at the work party on Saturday getting another cemetery cleaned up.
All right. Well, I hope it goes well. Thanks again. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for coming on.
All right, Dave.
Take care. Got a few announcements. Monty Fritz will be in Livingston, Tennessee this Saturday, and I think we have a slide on that. It will pop up here in just a second. March 28th, 12:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the VFW Hall, Livingston, Tennessee, 103 West Hinston. As I said already, in Livingston, that's listed twice. He's going to make opening statement. They're going to get written questions from a moderator, and the audience will be asked questions as well, or be able to ask questions. All Republican candidates for these positions have been invited, and the governor candidates, which obviously includes Monty, they start at 2:30. And if you have any questions about the event, contact Rena at 051-090-@gmail.com. And this is paid for by the Friends of Overton County. Now, I know I think there's another event in Overton County on Saturday, but I could be mistaken. And I don't have that information, but contact the local GOP there in Overton, and I'm sure they can give you all the skinny on that. Now, on March 31st in Stewart County, it's going to actually be our TFA meeting. We're going to have Tiffany Boyd, and this is at the Stewart County Visitor Center. It's at 117 Visitor Center Lane off Donaldson Parkway in Dover, Tennessee. Once again, March 31st, that's a Tuesday. We start at 7 p.m. Featured speaker, Tiffany Boyd. She's a former tenured public school teacher. She's a founder of Free Your Children, which seeks to equip citizens to defend parental and educational rights through Christian discipleship and constitutional advocacy. She's an education consultant, podcast host, and education researcher. She is a monthly contributor to the Murfreesboro Pulse. Her work has been featured in the Daily Wire, the Liberty Sentinel, WorldNet Daily, WSMV in Nashville, the Christian Post, and the Blaze. Now, you don't have to be a member to attend this event, and we'd be glad to have you. And if you haven't heard her speak, I've had her on my show a couple of times. I've never been to one of her seminars, but I've heard they're really, really informative. So come on out. That's this Tuesday, 7 p.m., Stewart County Visitor Center. Love to have you. And I think that is just about it. But a reminder, hey guys, engage with the different organizations to keep up with the legislation. So anything firearms related, Tennessee, anything firearms related, go to Tennessee Firearms Association. Things like the nullification bill and other sovereignty issues, you're going to go to tncss.weebly.com and sign up for the Substack. You need to sign up for the Substack. That'll give you the most information. Tennessee Stands is a great site, as is Tennessee Eagle Forum, freeyourchildren.com. I just mentioned that one. And for anything election related, and I don't think we're going to get anything election integrity related through this year. They did kill another good bill. Actually, they killed two bills. One bill had to do with making sure that whoever's on the ballot for president in Tennessee is actually a natural born citizen in accordance with the Constitution. But they didn't want that. So that bill got killed in committee. From what I understand, the question was asked, well, would this bill prevent, say, Ted Cruz from running for president? And well, yes, because Ted Cruz is not a natural born citizen. And so that was it. The bill lost. And then there was another bill that had to do with, if let's say that your parents were from Tennessee but you'd never lived in Tennessee and you were living overseas somewhere and just living over there. We're not talking military. We're not talking about in a diplomatic situation. We're just talking about you live over there, your parents from Tennessee, but you never have lived in Tennessee, but now you're an adult. You shouldn't be voting in any of our elections, but right now they are. And apparently our state legislature is good with that because it was just killed in committee. So TennesseeFairElections.org is the best organization for that. So look at those, keep up, make phone calls, elections coming. There's going to be not only local county elections, all of your state reps are up for re-election. Some of the state senators are up for re-election. And then of course we got a governor's race. We've got, you can vote for the Swamp Barbie, which would be Marcia. You could vote for John Rose. I don't know why you would. Or you can vote for Monty Fritz, who actually has a backbone, can actually think for himself, actually believes in the Constitution, and will stand up for it. He basically is somebody who says what he means and means what he says. So those are your choices. And I just, vote wisely, because we're going to need a good governor for the future, especially if at the federal level we no longer control the House and or Senate. Because if we lose either one of those, then it's going to be ugly. The Trump administration is not likely to accomplish anything else positive. And I'm not saying I agree with everything they do, by no means, but we'll be done. We'll be toast at the federal level. Got to get a good governor, got to get a good state legislature. Hey, thank you for watching. Please, if you haven't already subscribe. 50 some subscribers away from having our goal of 1,000. So help us out with that. And also, if you subscribe, then you won't miss shows that might pop up all of a sudden. Oh, by the way, for Monday, our guest is going to be Jeff Cobble, constitutional attorney. We've had him on before. We're going to talk about the 14th Amendment. And I've talked about it before. We're going to talk about the original intent. We're going to talk about the, by all accounts, fraudulent passing of it. We're going to talk about the court's understanding of it for nearly the first 60 years. And then we're going to talk about how the court started to pervert it on its own. The court perverted it on its own starting about 1925 and just snowballed all the way for the next 40, 50 years. It's a court-created perversion, and it's causing so many problems. It's already caused so many problems in our country, and it's going to cause even more. So, want to know more about that? Tune in. That will probably be a fairly long show. He's my only guest for that night. If you've never heard Jeff, this is a good opportunity. So that's next Monday at 7 p.m. That's it for tonight. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on Monday. Good night from Big Rock, Tennessee.